Thanks for joining us. This is our extended interview with Jaclyn Foster. Jaclyn owns the Jaclyn Foster Paralegal Group, where they offer recruiting services to solo attorneys and small law firms nationwide. The first part of this video is from our GNGF Live, which happens every other Wednesday over on our Facebook page. The second part here, in this bonus extended interview, we dive into the pros and cons of hiring legal staff as a 1099 versus a W-2. If you already saw the live, I'll put the timestamp to the exclusive extended interview below. And be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can follow along with our great conversations on legal marketing and the business side of running a law firm. Welcome to GNGF Live, your bi-weekly Ask the Experts about all things law firm marketing and business growth. I'm Mark Homer, author of Online Law Practice Strategies and founder of Get Noticed, Get Found. On this show, we focus on the business side of growing and running your law firm. So I'm excited to have today's guest, Jaclyn Foster, who's the owner of Jaclyn Foster Paralegal Group. As you're running a growing law firm, growing staff becomes one of the key responsibilities of a law firm owner. Jaclyn helps law firms of all sizes navigate this critical function. As always, be sure to like and subscribe to our page, not just the video, so you can get updated when our next episode goes live. And of course, it never hurts for you to show just a little love and hit that like button on the video too. It really helps us a lot. We've got moderators in the chat, so please ask questions and interact during this premiere. And if you're watching this in the future, after the premiere, we do monitor the comments and we'll reach out to our guests and answer any follow-up questions you have. That's because we love you all and we love getting to meet you online. And I'm excited to say we'll be in person again soon. You can find a list of our upcoming webinars, CLEs, and all our other events where we'll be speaking on our website at gngf.com/events. We have an extensive library of videos, including extended interviews, as well as our in-depth GNGF tips series, where we dive into topics like getting a solid ROI on pay-per-click, and much, much more over on our YouTube channel. You can watch those videos, after this interview, of course, at the link in the chat. Okay, let's get to the interview. All right, Jaclyn Foster, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Mark. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. So, this is just an amazing topic, right? Because for, growing law firms, they're growing their business, like the staffing component becomes oftentimes the most important and probably the biggest thorn in people's side sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
So you started your business full time, kind of going strong, like during the pandemic, right?
Right in the thick of the stay-at-home order. Yep.
Yeah. So good for you. And, but I'm curious, though, because you kind of navigated through this whole pandemic, helping law firms. What's changing in kind of like this legal staffing and legal staffing industry as we're kind of now starting to come out or see the other side of this pandemic?
Sure. So it's actually really been an interesting transition in and out. So when I started my business, the pandemic was very much here, real, throwing businesses at home, work from home, don't come into the office. It was very strong. And a lot of my clients that I had first signed contacted me because they ended up having to furlough or lay off their staff because they didn't have the work. Everything slowed down. We all know how it impacted businesses. And so they contacted me mainly because, truthfully, virtual contract work has been here for years. It's nothing new. It's just that suddenly firms were in a position to say, this isn't out of the ordinary for me now because I either have my staff working remotely and my business is suffering anyway, so I can hire a 1099 and have more control and not risk losing them to other firms that maybe are surviving the pandemic a little bit stronger. So that's where I really think that I did take off. I started my business at the right time during the pandemic to really get that awareness out there of this is an option while you're struggling. And then, fast forward 1 year now, we're kind of coming out of the pandemic. Of course, it's still here, but people are getting vaccinated. Everybody's wanting to go back to the office. And I am in a part of huge, huge communities with paralegals that I'm seeing a lot of pushback. They're all coming to me, lots of them every single day. How do I contract? How do I continue to work from home? I don't want to go back. I've been home and now I don't want to go back. So they're really trying to find that flexibility in their careers as well. So really the pandemic brought us into this. It almost started a new trend that nobody wants to leave now. So now I'm really coaching my clients around what's happening and how are they going to navigate that with their W-2s as they're trying to bring them back into the office. And they're kind of almost refusing and actively looking for stay-at-home work because a lot of firms have found that remote work is more cost effective. You know, you don't have to deal with employees commuting. My car broke down. I have a little sniffle, so I'm not coming in. I've seen paralegals that, you know, they wake up, they're not feeling so well, but luckily they don't have to get out of their pajamas. They can go right to the couch and work in that comfort while they're still sick. So sick days have been, you know, lessened so much. Their productivity has shown. Not every paralegal, some of them struggle, you know, with self-motivation, but those that can handle it in a professional way, they're in their efficiency and their productivity is increasing. There's less office drama, there's less cattiness, all those things that happen when you're in firm. I think they're now seeing this remote setup, just because the pandemic's over, doesn't have to end. So that's a huge thing that's been changing in the thick of the in and outs of the pandemic, and really now creating this industry that's going to boom. And I promise everybody listening, it's going to boom. Paralegals want to contract. They want to feel control of their careers, especially the ones with 20 plus years of experience.
Right.
They want to feel that level of control in their life. So it's become a lucrative option for them, and it is going to become a huge business. Now, while we also look at the paralegal is changing in general. Arizona just launched the ability for paralegals to do very limited representation of clients. They're starting that trend. The paralegals fought the ABA for so long to say, let's differentiate us from legal assistants. So they're really starting to demand more seriousness in who they are and what they do. And that pandemic transition is making it that much harder, or heightened, I should say.
So it's interesting too. For like the other thing about the pandemic that probably corresponded with you know, the ability to kind of do this even more is, like, I saw, you know, firms like, you know, embracing technology for the first time, or almost forced to embrace technology,
yep.
and or take it to the next level, right? And which allows for, you know, not having to have somebody not even in your office or in your, you know, local town, but like have somebody across the country who can do work, right? I mean, people, if you're a small firm in a small town, you have a lot more access, I assume, through, you know, like the work that you do by finding people anywhere, right?
Absolutely. You know, I could take a trip to Florida and bring my laptop with me and access my case files. I don't, you know, and that's the other thing. It's really starting to make that differentiation between W-2 and a 1099 even more lucrative, because they don't have to take that vacation time. There's no gray areas. I'm going to go on a trip with my kids soon, and I'm taking my laptop with. I can still work. So a great point that you brought up on embracing the technology. I think back to when I worked in-house for a firm, and we had a week-long trial about 2 hours away from the office in a different county, different jurisdiction. And we were operating off of VPN, and it was an absolute nightmare trying to access the servers, the files. I look back, had I known then what I know now about, you know, cloud-based systems, Clio, really leveraging that case management where I can pick up and go to trial. I can pick up and go anywhere. So I had counseled a lot of my clients that contacted me that were very desperate for my help, were those that weren't set up and they immediately had to go home. I had clients out in New York that it was really, really bad out there, call me and say, I have everything saved to my desktop. They didn't even have anything on VPN. So we got them really eagerly, quickly, let's get this moved over. We, you know, remoted into their desktop. We got them all set up in a cloud base. And now the ability for their staffing and where they can go with their firm is endless.
That's awesome. And you've got, I mean, just, you know, so many years of experience, you know, in-house doing this, you know, so you know what is needed for a paralegal, right?
Absolutely. That's why I wanted to start my business. The paralegal should know how to staff the paralegal and get the paralegal going. So yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. So tell me, because I think this is an interesting point that I've heard you make about how staffing and outsourcing in general, right? Like it actually relates to, you know, something near and dear to my heart, right? The marketing and networking for a firm.
Absolutely. So this is a pretty broad, long topic. So you can tell me when to stop and pause. It all kind of cycles back to the 1099 paralegal and what I specialize in, mainly because I have this strong belief that you can't sustain what you cannot attract, what you cannot sustain. So what I find in attorneys going out marketing, they get a really strong month of marketing, and they maybe meet an expert like you, whoever that may be, and they really get their marketing plan drawn up and they execute it. suddenly they're driving in all of this traffic, but who is there to sustain it? So
Right.
I get attorneys that contact me and say, I am drowning in work. Great, your marketing plan worked. That's not a bad problem to have. But if you don't have anybody backing you up to take on that work, that paralegal work, what happens to the attorney then is they're stuck working on drafting petitions, working on doing basic motions, the things that paralegals should be doing, and then their marketing efforts stall.
Mm-hmm.
So the number one thing I see, I'm not a marketing expert, but I do all my own marketing, is consistency is key. So if you back off of your marketing and then go back, and then you back off, and then you go back, especially in these small towns, you need to be very consistent in front of your community and who you are to really develop that personal brand and who you are. And so when they're ebb and flowing in and out of their marketing, because once they're driving all these leads in, they're too busy working on that work that then their marketing stalls, and then the cycle continues. Next month, I have no new leads, I have no work. Now I got to go back out and market, and it's just this vicious cycle. So the idea of the 1099, when you're looking at, I have a cost analysis spreadsheet. It's a huge cost analysis spreadsheet to determine if a W-2 is going to save you more money or a 1099 is going to. Mm-hmm. 9 times out of 10, the 1099 is the route to go, and it's not necessarily because of the federal taxes you're saving, the state taxes, the benefits, the downtime, unproductive time. It's about the hours needed that you're not wasting. So you go and hire a 20-hour, 40-hour paralegal, and you're still ebbing and flowing. You're driving, that traffic isn't as consistent yet.
Right.
Attorneys get really nervous to bring in a full-time because they say, well, then I'm not going to take a paycheck those months that I don't get new clients and new retainers.
Right.
So what the 1099 can come and do and really support your marketing efforts is you can hire them for 5 hours a week. You can increase that to 20 hours a week if the work comes in. You're only paying them for what you need at any given moment, that it gives you that flexibility to not be fearful of driving more traffic to your firm. I know a lot of my clients will outright say to me, I've stopped all marketing efforts because I can't support this. I'm working weekends, late nights. I don't have time with my family. I don't have a sense of freedom and personal life and going out or doing any of that because my marketing is drowning me. So the idea and why I do this is because the heart of what I do for the 1099 is to really create the freedom of choice and give my solo attorneys, especially in my small firms, that confidence that they can keep driving in and they have very strong senior level support to support that work.
Right. And like for those watching, like that was amazing. So like we call it top of mind awareness. Like you have to have that consistency. You have to have that top of mind awareness. But if you're turning your marketing on and off because you can't staff it, like that's gonna hit you. So I mean that's amazing.
Yeah.
And like this idea of flexing to the capacity. I think about that. Like I was thinking initially that, you help somebody find a full-time paralegal, but I didn't think that once they're working with you, that they can flex up and down on the hours. I'll be honest, like we've actually had a client in the past that came to us once and said, hey, you need to turn off all my ads. We're like, well, what's going on? We're like, oh, I'm too busy. I have to hire 3 people and I don't have time to do that and whatever. So I just pause. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, it's going to take us forever to kind of get that motion going again. And like what are some other options? So I know from a lawyer side, there's like, firms out there like law clerk and stuff that help with lawyers, but like flexing up and down the paralegals like makes total sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what's definitely needed for them to feel comfortable and confident. And the other thing with the 1099 on that is, me as a business owner myself, I have spreadsheets all over the place. Every single day, I'm trying to track my profitability. Right. Every single decision I make, everything I do, every new client, how much are they going to cost me? What's the cost? When you have a W-2 employee on a 40-hour-a-week basis, it gets very difficult to track profitability because you don't know what they're working on. Even if you have billable time, this is a real life story. I had a legal assistant in our office that I found out we would go to hearings and she'd be on makeup tutorials on Facebook while she was working. So how productive is she actually being, and how can you actually gauge if her body in that seat is increasing profitability or giving you any return on investment at all? The nice thing about the 1099 and working remotely is they clock in and out on your stuff while they're working on it, and you know exactly what you're paying. It's an hourly rate. There's no hidden fees. There's no taxes. There's nothing like that. You know exactly what you're paying. And then you know what you can charge for that paralegal rate. So really, if you're charging $125 an hour for paralegal work and your contractor costs you $40, $50, $70, whatever that might be for that hour, you can actually see it in clear numbers how that's profiting your firm. So it cycles back down to, are your marketing efforts creating solid return on investment?
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, staff, when they're full time in an office, right, they get used all kinds of random ways. So it makes the tracking even harder, right? It's like, okay, was it really how much I'm paying them that is going against all my client billings, or is it the fact that I had them run and get lunch and coffee and plan a party, right?
Right.
All kinds of random things that people get, or help with my marketing, right? Like paralegals get asked to do a lot of random things I've seen over the years.
Yep. And that's exactly why when I first get my clients, if they contact me, I ask them, how many hours are you thinking you need? And they're like, boy, I really don't know. Because, I really don't know. I know how long it takes me to do this stuff. I tell them, take 1 week, I'll start looking for your paralegal. You take 1 week, you keep a notepad or something next to you and start jotting down what the little things you're working on, who could do that. Because really, as an attorney, I'm of the belief, especially in a solo firm, because you have this option to be innovative with 1099, an attorney should be consulting clients, setting fee agreements, attending court hearings, and network marketing, getting out there. The other stuff, ads, all of that should be an expert such as yourself, somebody like that. Your paralegal work needs to be done by your paralegal, and your secretary work needs to be done by your secretary. You have to keep everybody in their zone of genius. So make sure that you're staying in, the lawyer needs to stay in their zone of genius. Be a lawyer, because you went to law school to learn how to be a lawyer, not run a law firm.
Right. So, and I love that zone of genius concept, right? Because I think it also, and we were talking before we recorded, so I just want to bring this up too, because it's not just like once you learn like what somebody's doing with the paralegal, you can kind of find that, well, some of these tasks are maybe more just like virtual assistant tasks, right? Or, like just an assistant, like secretary type. And like you can then kind of peel that off and help people even find like a virtual assistant or something too, right? Like you start like identifying ways that they could leverage more of those flex resources.
Yep. And I actually just launched a couple months ago, a very specific legal, I call it my legal virtual assistant. So it's cheaper.
Oh, okay.
They do more of those admin type work. There are attorneys that will push back on me and say, I need at least somebody in the office. I need somebody. So I always say, who you need to invest in? A solid rock star, lifelong goal, careered secretary. You need somebody that knows how to work with your clients, be the face of your firm, handle sometimes lawyers need that hand-holding on managing their schedule, their court, all of that. Those are a lot cheaper, and people that want to stay in those roles. I have an attorney that I work for. He was a boss of mine very early on in my career that he's now half retired and goes down to Florida for the winters, and I'm just helping him with his some criminal cases he has, just as and he had a secretary. I remember him telling me, I don't know why these firms are having such a hard time keeping a staff, because he said, I had one secretary for 40 years, and that was my secretary. She knew my personal life. She knew, my strengths, my weaknesses, and she was my right-hand man at any given moment. And those people also have that zone of genius. So there's so many innovative strategy approach ways that you can staff your firm to be able to sustain all of that marketing work that's paying off.
So you talked about a word that I like to think about. It's like in terms of, like really thinking about growing your profitability, right? So since you work with all these law firms in a wide variety, you said, a lot of solos, a lot of small firms. What are some of the things you think that are really kind of in the way that you've found, just tweaking this and this really helps scale the profitability side?
Well, first of all, efficiency. So a lot of my clients contact me and they will say, we don't have a case management system. It's all in our head. And so I say, well, then every single time somebody new touches the file, you have to spend how long to get them brought up to speed. We always look for efficiencies, leveraging their case management systems to work for them, not the other way around. I think a lot of firms get scared of, like, for instance, Clio. Most of my clients will say, yeah, we have Clio, but we only use it for the billing functions. I'm like, do you know how much Clio does? Do you know how much it does and how user-friendly it is? I love Clio. Some of my firms, we work through a project management software. So the profitability the more efficient you can get, the more you can stretch your dollar, where that dollar is going. So if you have systems, for instance, I have a client down in Georgia that has the most sophisticated, straightforward, simple system I've ever seen in my life. And we go in to work on their stuff, and the paralegal will sit on there for, it takes them 20 minutes to try to plunk through. What do I need to do? I know exactly where to find this. I got to update a client. I run over to Clio. I see the last thing that happened on the file. I know how to update them. Everything is so quick that we have a hard time. We're managing that. The paralegal is managing the entire probate side of their firm. We have a hard time reaching 20 hours a week, and this is a $100,000 a month revenue firm. So 20 hours a month, I should say. So because they're so efficient, they take the guesswork out of everything. That's a huge part of the profitability, as well as being creative with, now that I offer the legal virtual assistant, I have a firm that utilizes my paralegal for 20 hours a week, but she needs somebody strong in admin work. So my legal virtual assistants I hired, they have paralegal experience, just not as much as my paralegals. So they maybe 2 years, 3 years, maybe they just got out of college. So they have that sense of knowing how the firm operates, the legal terms, things like that. They're not, a lay person that doesn't understand how a law office runs. And so we contacted, and we're starting to now nitpick, because we've worked for an entire year really narrowing down our systems, creating her templates, getting everything so cut and dry that you can bring anybody in and train them in 2 weeks and they're ready to go. Now we're ready to bring in that legal virtual assistant that's going to do final reviews with clients. She's actually going to print off wills and FedEx them over to the firm ready for signing with tabs, because she wants to make a fully virtual firm. And there's so many amazing things you can do with your firm once you have it really organized and narrowed down into its processes.
Yeah, and we've had some other guests on, like specifically around like virtual law firms and stuff, and it's fascinating what just like the real life stories of people who are truly running, virtual firms, or people who are live in one state and their firm is in a state across the country.
I got a couple of those clients.
Yeah, and it's amazing, but it takes the systems and the processes and stuff. And then chipping away, I love that. Being more efficient and effective at every step of the way is where a lot of the profitability comes, right?
Absolutely.
It's not, more revenue is great, but if it's more revenue and you spend it all, it doesn't matter. So
exactly.
And then you talked about like that kind of like marketing and that sustainable growth, and not just kind of going up and down and having that kind of like a pendulum of good times and bad times. What do you do to work with the clients on kind of like those sustainable growth plans, if lack of a better term?
Sure. So when they come to me, a lot of them are working with a marketing expert, and they're saying that, I don't have the work yet to hire a full-time, like I stated, it's not there. I'm going to eat up all my profits by just keeping seats warm, and we don't want that. So we say, okay, let's start on the 5 hour a week minimum. I do require a 5 hour a week minimum, which I think is totally reasonable, because it keeps your contractor a little bit more dedicated to your firm. If they know, like, I got 5 hours dedicated to them at least, they can increase and decrease, but the 5 hours is my minimum. So when they come, we say, okay, well, don't, get that marketing going, start bringing in leads, get your revenues up. We're here to handle the work as it comes. And so every couple of months we do like quarterly check-ins. Do we need to increase your rate? Because I give discounts as the rate or the hourly increases. I give discounts for the more they use the paralegal. So it says, yep, our marketing is going great. We're going to keep running with it. We're going to keep on that bicycle and keep going forward. Now we increase that. And then in the next quarter, it might have doubled. And now it's like, we will sit down and look at my spreadsheet. Is it time to hire a W-2, or do you want to continue working with this contractor and increase the rate, the minimum usage some more? So we really start to analyze like every step of the way. Is it more cost effective to do it this way? Are you at a place yet where you feel confident on your consistent, your bottom line is high enough to support the 40 hour? So then, and then as we go, like I said, I have that firm, a year in, we've been working so hard together. Now she had a light bulb moment and figured out that a virtual firm that works for her, and she just gets to be the attorney license backing it and the one giving the legal advice and all of that. She's now working with me to keep hiring 1099s, like find the roles, and roles are getting developed as we're increasing the firm. So through all of that whole process, right. I don't do marketing, Mark. I will tell you, I'm not a marketing like at all. I don't know how to market. But through that whole process, there's usually an expert backing them on that marketing, and they never have to stop. They keep doing it because we're on the sustainability side where we're going to continue making it sustainable. Now, I've had clients that their marketing efforts have increased, or maybe they haven't even done marketing, but they start bringing in like multiple paralegals and multiple even associate attorneys, and they just quite aren't ready for that. And It's scary to watch, and you try to keep them away from that cliff because you're like, you can't keep what you can't sustain. Why would you drive that in and have all of those there? You're not going to keep either. Your marketing is going to overwhelm these people, and then you're not going to have time. It becomes a nightmare. So like I said, in my head, I can't draw it out, but in my head, I think of it as a staircase. Every quarter we go through the up and up and up on how we're going to keep that firm so that marketing does not need to slow down. And they can grow it to the firm that they want. I have clients that they want to go up in a different state. They maybe want to go to Florida and are consider, they're barred over there too. And they're like, I want to keep my Texas firm open. So the growth potential is endless, and it's amazing, only being in business. I mean, I've done this work for quite a few years, but having my own business and being the lead on it, it's amazing how quickly, when they can sustain their marketing efforts, that they fly and go with it.
That's awesome. I wanted to dive in, and because you talked about 1099s versus W-2s, which, first of all, as a business owner myself, it's like always one of those big questions. And for law firms, the fact that that's an option, and you've got thoughts and recommendations on this. So we can post more on our YouTube channel on Friday if you'll stick around for a few more minutes, because we're kind of running out of time on our Facebook. Awesome. Yep. So before we wrap up, though, where can people find and connect with you online?
So they can go to my website, jf-paralegalservices.com, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there. Just type in Jaclyn Foster. You'll see me with a yellow blazer, so you'll know it's me. So you can find me either of those ways.
Awesome. And we'll post that in the show notes as well for everybody.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe to our Facebook page so you get notified when our next episode goes live. We have new interviews about law firm marketing and the business side of running your firm here every other Wednesday. We're going to keep going here in the GNGF studios, and you can watch the full extended interview with Jaclyn Foster this Friday over on our YouTube channel. We'll be diving into more detail about hiring legal staff and the pros and cons of 1099 versus W-2 employees. We'll see you then. Jaclyn, thanks for sticking with me.
Absolutely. Happy to stay.
Awesome. So you've talked about 1099 W-2s and these spreadsheets and these like all these big algorithms you have to figure this out. But first of all, I want to talk more about 1099s because it's interesting that between virtual, and we talked about virtual firms and small firms and solo firms. So how does hiring somebody as a 1099 specifically help struggling solo firms, for example?
So like we said, we were really focusing on the marketing point of it, but truthfully, it's at that budget part of it, because you're not going to find a W-2 that's going to work for less than 20 hours. And if you do, you're not going to keep them around very long. They're going to go find, because if they're looking for W-2 work, typically it's 20 to 40 hours a week. So my solo and small firms that contact me, they're my bread and butter. They're why I do this, is because I know that pain point. Maybe even you have a paralegal on staff already and they're drowning in work, and you're not quite ready to add that second person yet, financial wise, and you wish that your paralegal or your staff understood that, but they're getting so stressed out, you're fearing you're going to lose them. It's that 1099 route is you're hiring contractors that can come in for just the set amount of time that you specifically need and set aside for them. So they can work as, additional support staff. They can be your entire staff if that's what makes more sense. I see it for more the entire staff, meaning they're willing to take on a full-time contractor, utilize them for 40 hours, 50 hours a week, is when they're in an area where the minimum salary requirement for a paralegal, if you're going to get anybody with talent, is 85,000, 75,000, really, really high in these bigger city areas.
Right.
My rural firms, that live in Bohunk nowhere, like 2,000 people are there. They really just struggle finding the skill set to be able to have a qualified team behind them. So because I do the 1099, my reach is nationwide. You'd be amazed at the people that have Wisconsin experience but are now living in Florida or Nevada. You'd be amazed at how, the market pool just is completely wide open. So it's a kind of a twofold. It's either they can't quite afford a full time or a 20-hour, or they have such ebb and flows in their workload that they're scared because they know, routinely January through March is their slow months. And what are they going to do? Not take a paycheck home for 3 months, which I've seen. And then, as I said, on the alternative side is just not having access to senior level quality support at an affordable level.
So is there like a point, where you could say, okay, like if, here's the struggle somebody typically hits when they're hitting this point, now that's a good time or good indicator to think about like a 1099?
I wouldn't say there's any hard set rule to know. There are things that you can pay attention to. One of them is, can you literally say at the end of the night, you're working until midnight at the kitchen table at home? Well, is your spouse putting your kids to bed and you can't be involved in that? Are you missing family vacations? Can you not go on a family vacation and not have your phone ring 15 times a day for work related situations? That's one big indicator, is when the attorney themselves is drowning in work and they have nobody to support them. I always say there is no such thing as a solopreneur. Even if you are a solo attorney, you have people behind you that need to help you grow. If you don't,
Right.
If you try to do it solo, completely 100% solo, it's not going to be successful. Even myself, I have a virtual assistant. I have my family even that supports me in so many ways. We all need that some level of support. So when you start to feel that you're solo and you're alone and you're drowning in this work and everything begins and ends with you, that's probably a big indicator that you need to start bringing on some temporary help, or not temporary, some contractor as needed help. Then, another one is looking at your profits. Are your profits increasing and you have that space? But I know that feeling when you start getting those big profits and you don't want to spend them, you want to keep them. That's where that contractor is a solution. You don't have to commit to 40 hours a week. You don't have to commit to $50,000 salaries. You can just use them. And then if you want to part ways with them, there's no implications to your business. Nothing happens with your work comp. Nothing happens, or your unemployment, nothing happens. You don't have to fear lawsuits, any of that. So you can have that additional control. So it's really trying to figure out, truthfully, the number one reason is drowning in work and not quite being confident to bring in that full time.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned like the solopreneur and the solo law firm owner who is doing everything, and I always look at that as like it's essentially, if you're just like a solo law firm owner who is doing all the work, you're kind of doing a contractor and don't even have hours to do it, right? I mean,
Right.
like you're essentially just contracting out some law work when it comes in, and that's it. And then another line I think I heard once was, if you don't have an assistant, then you are one.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. That was when and it took me so long. This is kind of off topic, but it took me so long when I finally hired my virtual assistant, who's absolutely amazing, to say, like, I'd have moments where I'd be sitting at my computer trying to figure something out and fix these little things. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, send an email to my assistant. She can handle this, and that's exactly it. Because like me, as in my business, I'm at this point where I need to stay in my zone of genius, which is the staffing expertise, as well as consulting my clients. I shouldn't be worrying about pulling time reports and
Right.
doing all those little things, because how am I going to scale my business if I'm stuck doing that admin work?
Right. And then, there's a whole bunch of like, I'm sure, rules around 1099 that like I don't want to get into here, but that you probably help work with your clients on, because it's like, some people try to do one-off stuff on their own, and without doing a whole bunch of stuff, I assume there's a lot of things you can run into, legally on, like hiring a 1099 that really should be a W-2 or something, right?
Yep. So we have contracts in place, and this is a great introduction to what I'm actually doing aside from my business. Is I've now launched a paralegal entrepreneur circle to teach other paralegals how to be freelancers, how to be contractors, because there's such a strong desire for that right now. And one of the things I educate them on is, I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving any legal or tax advice, but the 1099 does have its set criteria. You cannot set my hours. You can't tell me when and where to work. You can't tell me what platform to use. You can't tell me what computer to use. You can't pay my expenses, all of those things. And they're very much outlined in my contract. So one time I had an attorney be really alarmed by my contract because it specifically says you cannot tell us when to work. We will be self-regulated. And I never explained it before because I assumed all my lawyers would understand this, being lawyers. But I now explain it and this is what I tell my paralegals. As a contractor, yes, you get those freedoms and that flexibility in your schedule. But if you're never available to your clients when they need you, you're not going to keep clients for very long. So at the end of the day, we very much maintain, they email, they'll email my paralegals, when's a good time for you to meet with me once a week? And they'll set that, a mutually agreed upon hours. It's not somebody saying you have to be available at this time. So we really work hard to establish that 1099 relationship. So there are, of course, if even my 40 hours that I have, making sure that they're not verging into the W-2. A lot of them work at midnight. A lot of them work through the weekends. They're 40 hours, giving you 40 hours, but they're not set on a schedule for 8 to 5, 40 hours a week.
Yeah. It's funny. Like I've had, some virtual assistants that work, off hours and stuff. And it's actually sometimes nice to think of something at 3:30 that you need to get done. And it doesn't have to wait till tomorrow to get done because they're working some odd hours. And it's like, it gets picked up at 9 o'clock and they knock it out by midnight. And when I come in the next day,
it's done.
There's some work done, right?
Amazing.
Like we just gained a day.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Love that.
Yeah, it's the absolute best feeling. One time I just actually recently had to go up to Minnesota to pick up a puppy for my aunt and uncle. And I was driving, it was a 10-hour drive there and back. And I had these emergencies coming up. And I just forwarded them to my assistant and she just handled them. It's so nice. It's the best. It's the best feeling.
That's awesome. So you talked about, in our earlier portion about these, complex spreadsheets you have and stuff without going through all the detail of your formulas and stuff. Are there some rules of thumbs for thinking about 1099 versus W-2?
Well, it's pretty simple as far as the cost wise goes on my spreadsheet. So I do have an entire spreadsheet. It's going to list out every single thing you could think of that a W-2 might cost your business. So anything from benefits, vacation, sick time, federal, state taxes, unemployment, work comp. And then it kind of also goes down into hiring, training, recruiting, and then as well as, do you offer a cell phone? Do you have to get a new office space to have this employee? What's that going to cost you in square footage just to have that extra office for them? Are you going to pay for their parking? What types of other benefits are you going to give them? That I leave blank and up to the attorney, because sometimes they do contact me and say, we're talking and going through the spreadsheet. Well, I'm not offering benefits. I don't have to, so I'm not going to. And I said, okay, that's fine. But now we have to increase your turnover rates by 158% because that's the average. That's the average increase. If you're not offering benefits, your risk of turnover increases by 158%. So that goes into downtime when you yourself, if you're not hiring a recruiter to do it, you're trying to find somebody. It's not, it takes time. It's an art to try to find good people and interview them and get them through the process. I do that full time. You also have to think about training. Who's going to train them? Are you bringing in somebody really qualified that's going to take a week and be brought up to speed and they know what they're doing? Or do you have to spend that time developing them for the next month? And then hopefully once you develop them and give them a couple of years, they don't leave you for somebody that has benefits. Right. So you really have to look at all of these little costs with W-2. And then in comparison, I have the 1099 sheet on there that it's just the hourly rate. That's it. And then a little bit extra for some training on your firm's system. So like I tell all my clients, of course, you will have to do some training with them. They need to know your systems. They need to get brought up to speed on your clients. It's not like they were mind readers and come in perfectly ready to go, but they're all very highly skilled. They know how to do, whatever practice area you're in, they're very good at it. They're very micro-focused. So that training time goes down. I do get some pushback there too when we look at it. Like, what if, I mean, just because I'm hiring 1099 doesn't mean I'm losing turnover. What if they quit on me? Which happens, and of course does. But the difference is you're not investing as much time off the bat to get them brought up to speed, to get them onboarded, to pay their federal, state, all the things. You're not investing all that time. So it's easier to replace and turn them over. I mean, I hate to make it sound like a wheelhouse of just okay, in, out, in, out, in, out, but it's easier to funnel through 1099s. So then when I have my clients in front of me together, we're working through this, deciding what's the best route for you. And it's all going to be dependent on where they're at in their firm. Are they in a growth phase? Are they in a transition phase? Are they really well established and just lost somebody and they need to replace them? Where are they at? So that's when we look, what's realistic for costs on the W-2 where you're at. We type in their salary, it pre-populates all of the costs. And then this is how much, you know, I think truthfully, I think if you're hiring for a 20-hour, I truthfully believe that you really need about a 5 to 10 hour contractor if you're hiring senior level, because that's how much you don't realize the time that's wasted in firm. So then we look at it and then it populates into a comparison to say, this is how much money you're going to save by going the 1099 route. And of course, factoring in, do you need somebody in the office to open the door every single day?
Right.
You need somebody there to be answering phones, which a lot of my clients, they use like Ruby Receptionist, Smith AI.
Yep.
There's so many options out there to run a firm without having everybody in-house.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's like these formulas that you kind of put together, but there's also some subjectivity there. Like you have to kind of like really walk through step by step and say, you know, does this make sense? Does this make sense? Are you willing to risk it? Like there's a risk level too, right? Like bring on a W-2. And I think about that. It's like you bring on a W-2 at 20 to 40 hours a week, you're paying 20 to 40 hours a week for the next few months, whether they work out or not. I'm guessing with a contractor, it's a little easier to kind of go after 20 hours. Jaclyn, can you improve this or that with that person?
Absolutely.
Got it. Oh, okay.
There is that subjectivity for sure. Yep. It's case by case.
Awesome. So what else have I missed on I think I wanted to make sure I covered 1099 W-2. We talked about that. We've covered so much today.
I know.
We went off on tangent on virtual law offices.
Well, something we can talk about, what I would suggest is how to find a 1099. So I think that, you know, a lot of my clients that contact me realize it's not a no-brainer. I mean, it's almost seems like when you're not looking for something, it's in front of your face. And then the moment you're trying to find somebody, it's like nobody exists. And that's what my clients struggle with. And they come to me, you know, they like the fact that I handle the HR side of things, if you will. Right. I'm dealing with, if the contractor has issues, they come to me. Right. I cover their pay. If the attorney needs a couple of weeks to get caught up on their bill, I don't let any hiccups happen between. So they're just focused on working on the work, the paralegal relationship with the attorney. They don't have to worry about the business side. But if somebody wanted to go find a contractor on their own, there are some things, because I want to be very mindful of, I'm not going to pretend that there's not hesitations in hiring 1099. Sometimes it can feel like you're hiring a stranger and giving them access to all your very confidential files. I mean, attorneys are held to the highest standard of confidentiality and with their clients, and it can expose them to malpractice, all of those things. So there's a few, I'm mindful of that. I recognize that. I'm not going to pretend those don't exist. So there's quite a few things you can really pay attention to if you're going to go find a 1099 yourself and just hire them, is, you know, make sure, truthfully, I carry personal liability insurance. There's such a huge debate in the paralegal contractor world of you don't need to. We're operating under the attorney's malpractice insurance. We're always, you know, working under their supervision. I do my own because I want to express to my clients that I take their risk just as seriously as they do. So that's one thing I always say. That shows a level of professionalism and loyalty and dedication to what you're doing. The next is to really make sure that your 1099 has clear a background check, of course. So treat it a lot like a W-2. I clear background checks. I check references. I make sure, you know, they're still a human being, and you got to make sure you're paying attention to those things that they might be hiding behind their screen. Do a Zoom meeting. I never do my interviews via telephone. I want to see you face to face. I want to see your facial expressions. I want to get to know you as a human being, because you miss that when you don't have that 1099. And then also just make sure that they're established as an LLC. I worry about people just kind of taking odd end jobs here and there. Make sure that they're doing this for a business, because I have a lot of my clients that come to me and they're like, oh, well, I found somebody. Thanks anyway. And then they come back, well, she left for W-2 employment. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's she was doing this to get by. Make sure they're not doing this just because they're furloughed right now. I'm doing this because this is my business and I want to grow this business into, the rest of my life. So I'm here to stay. Make sure that they have those same feelings. And then once you get that contractor, I highly encourage a very set way of communication. No emails, don't back and forth email banter. Get like a Slack, something very quick. You can type, you can use Voxer for that quick voice communication. Try to replace what you're perceiving you're missing from a W-2 in-house. Try to replace that in the technology world. So make sure you got those case management systems set up. Do a weekly touch-base check-in on Zoom. Get to know each other, really build that, because when I bring my paralegals in on a 1099 basis, I want that firm to feel like they're not missing anything from a W-2. That's a real life employee. They get email addresses from my firms. All of their clients perceive them as their paralegal, not they're using outside sources for me, and people freak out. They've gotten a lot better about accepting the remote work because of COVID, the clients of attorneys, but it seems it's nicer when you can say at smithjoneslawfirm.com,
Right.
Make them your paralegal, make them perceive. There's nothing wrong with doing that. So just little tweaks that you can do to make that relationship really successful.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, we have a number of 1099s that we work with. I mean, it's marketing, right? So there's things that like you need to spin up and spin down depending on the campaigns, and 1099s are great for that. So similar, and we, like they're in our Slack, and we're thanking them. We're sending them, if we're getting company T-shirts, they're getting a company T-shirt, right? It's like they're part of the team, and I want them to treat my clients just like a full-time person would, and like so we just treat. In our mind, they're a full-time person. We just have to follow the rules, right?
Right, exactly. Perception is reality. So if reality is different, you don't have any control over them. They're not technically your employee. That doesn't matter, because what your client is perceiving, that's what matters. That's what the reality is. So yeah, there's all those things. I sent my 1099. All of my contractors got Starbucks gift cards for Valentine's Day. Right. Why not? You know what? Build that rapport and that relationship. So
love it. And I didn't even think about like where does somebody even go? Like if outside of working with a firm like yours to help them vet and find paralegals, make it easy, right? Like that's a one-stop shop. Like like I know in the marketing world, right? I can go to Upwork to find a designer or developer or something like that. But like, what are people just throwing stuff on Craigslist and Facebook posts of like I need a paralegal? Like where
Pretty
is?
much.
Yeah, there's no real like big source to go find that outside of like working with an agency like yours.
Not really. I mean, you can always post a job on Indeed. People will apply. LinkedIn, make a lot of connections. You should look on LinkedIn for paralegal services type companies or people that are doing something like that. That's the Google search. I mean, that's what I mean is it's like you think that, like I said, they're in your face when you're not looking for them, and then you look for them and it's like they all disappeared. That's why, I truthfully actually just highly recommend working with an agency, because they're going to handle all those things for you. They're going to handle the onboarding. All I have to do with my clients is get a contract in place between me and them. And then I find their paralegal, no costs at all. Find the paralegal, send them. They're ready to go on board. Some of them want to be involved in the interview process. That's absolutely fine too.
Right.
Meet a few candidates, but some of them are just like, send me one and let's go. They're ready to go. Onboard them. Here you go. They're good on my end. They're setting their contracts. So it just depends. I mean, so to answer your question, LinkedIn, there's a lot on LinkedIn, maybe some Facebook groups, post a job on Indeed, and just do a Google search.
Because and even Indeed, right? Indeed's like a lot of people are going there thinking part-time W-2 kind of work. So I would be worried about that.
I do actually leverage Indeed a lot.
1099s.
Yeah. And I just make it very clear, 1099 remote work. It's 5 hours a week. Yeah. So
which I guess in this new world that people are learning that remote work is not, people are, like you said, people are looking for remote work. So as law firms are opening up and encourage people to come back in the office, some people are kind of like looking elsewhere. So that's something I need to think about. Well, thanks so much for being with me today and sharing all this, about, like outsourcing and paralegals and 1099 versus W-2, because this is a very, very important topic. And like I said, as law firms are growing, you talked about the sustainability and the growth, just how important it is to really think about the hiring side.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks, Jaclyn.
Thank you.
Hey, what's up? I'm Josh. Thanks so much for joining us. If you feel like you learned something today, think of how beneficial it would be to chat with myself or another one of our marketing consultants one-on-one. Go ahead and visit our website to schedule your free consultation. It only takes a minute.